By the way, this might be too much information for some people, so if you don't want to hear about like baby stuff or, you know, pregnancy stuff, then maybe like switch off now. I'll give you 1 second. Okay. So a couple of weeks ago, it was Leo's first birthday. Well, technically it wasn't because he is a leap year baby, so he's born on the 29th of February, which means he actually only has a birthday every 4 years. And just to be even more confusing, he was actually born 2 months premature. So even though he's been on the earth technically for 12 months, his corrected age is only 10 months old. So difficult. Anyway, the way that Leo came into the world was pretty scary. Actually, it was really traumatic for me, and I've never really properly talked about it. So I thought it was about time that I shared my story, because maybe my story might affect someone else or help someone else. So I found out I was pregnant, super excited, having another baby. Nixon's gonna have a brother, yay. We found out it was a boy, so yeah. And it all kind of started around Christmas time, I suppose. I was feeling a bit uncomfortable, which I do anyway. I am not one of those people who loves being pregnant and it's so amazing and you feel your baby moving. No, that's not me. When the baby moves in my tummy, you see it. Like, it's creepy, it's alien, it's just, I just didn't like it. So, the 29th of January, walking through the lounge, perfectly fine, and then felt my underwear get wet. Now, I knew that I had not weed myself, so this was kind of weird. Changed my underwear, thought, okay, maybe it's just a weird pregnancy thing, whatever. Got wet again. At this point, was getting frustrated, more at the fact that I had changed my pants like twice now. Happened again, so I rang my midwife. Straight away, she said, it sounds like your waters have broken. Now, I know what waters breaking is because I had Nixon and he was a full-term baby. The day he was born, my waters broke. It was like a balloon popping inside me. Waters, all good, having a baby. Because I was only 27 weeks pregnant at this time, you just don't expect that to be happening. So my midwife said you need to go into the hospital. Majority of the time you go into hospital, you sit there for hours and hours waiting to get checked out. Eventually you're allowed to go home, and it was all a big waste of time. But, you know, she said I need to go in, so let's go in. A doctor came in, kind of had a look at things, and then had confirmed, yeah, your waters have broken. So, okay, my waters broke, cool, so what do we do about it, and can I go home now? He said you will be in hospital until your baby's born. Now in my brain I was 27 weeks pregnant, so I thought, well, a full-term baby's 40 weeks. That's a really long time. I have Nixon at home, who at this point was like 1.5. He was still little, he needs his mum. So that was all I was thinking, was that's way, way too long. Then it was, no, you won't be having your baby inside you till 40 weeks. It's most likely that you'll go into labour in the next 24 hours. I never at any point kind of thought of the medical side of it. I had to have steroid injections, which they said we need to give you the steroids because it helps your baby's lungs to develop and be strong for being born so early. And I needed IV antibiotics in case of an infection, and that my baby was probably going to be coming really soon. And it was kind of at that point where I was thinking, yeah, hang on, my baby's going to be born really early. But I still didn't properly understand how serious that was. I was sent for a scan to check the amniotic fluid levels, to check that there was still fluid around the baby, which came back, but there was still fluid around him, so that was a good thing. Then was the point where kind of the news I got seemed to be getting more and more serious. You will definitely get an infection, and the infection can harm you and your baby, and that will happen So if you don't have your baby in 24 hours, we need to figure out when is the right time for you to have your baby so that you both don't get really, really, really sick. So after a while, the doctors decided that they could send me just down the hall to the maternity ward. Was basically told that I would be monitored. So I had to wear the little baby monitor things on my tummy that check the, heart rate and the movements and all of that kind of stuff. I had to wear that twice a day. I had to have blood tests every single day to check for any increased things that could show infections. And then the next day came, and then the next day came, and then the next day came, and nothing was changing. I had a nurse come from the neonatal intensive care unit. I didn't understand what that was. I'd never seen it. I'd never heard of it. So it was kind of just a nurse talking to me about babies that come really early and how when they're born, they're most likely going to be put straight into an incubator and wheeled off to this intensive care unit. And I was told by one of the nurses in the unit that it would probably be a really good idea to go and do the NICU tour, which is where you can go through the neonatal intensive care unit with one of their head nurses, and they just kind of show you around the different rooms and what to expect, which when I look back was really helpful, because if I had not seen in there and just baby was taken there and I went to see my baby there, I would have freaked. Like, it's a really scary environment. So Dan came on his lunch break from work and did the tour with me. And I remember the tiniest baby in the intensive care unit was in an incubator. So, I mean, it's like a big plastic container and they're inside it. And this was the smallest thing I had ever seen. I can't even explain it. It's not like when people say, oh, it's so tiny, it's like a doll. Like this, it was just tiny. I asked the nurse, how old is that baby? And she said to us that it was 29 weeks. It should have been 29 weeks. And that was when I whispered to Dan, our baby's younger than that. And it was scary. Sorry, I don't want to cry. It was really scary. That was the first, like, realizing, oh my gosh, my baby is like younger than that. That tiny, tiny little thing, my baby's younger than that. I'd been in hospital for like a couple of weeks and I needed to have a magnesium infusion. So they put in an IV line, was told I would need it for, I think it was meant to be 10 hours, which I thought, oh my goodness. So they put it in, you feel it go through your veins and it's burning. After 10 hours, this alarm goes off and I was so excited. And then the nurse came in and she said to me, the doctors have decided that we're going to do it for 24 hours. Ugh. I was so sad. I ended up being in the hospital almost 5 weeks. Almost 5 weeks. All day, every day, in a tiny room for 5 weeks, feels like 5 years. I actually joined the hospital knitting club because why not? I've never knitted before, but you know, may as well do something. So that was kind of fun. I did it a couple of days a week. It was just like at the end of our little maternity unit, and that was awesome because I was allowed to get off my bed to walk to the end of the hallway to do a bit of knitting and then walk back. Like, it was literally like the highlight of my day. The doctors were kind of having conflicts over when the baby should come out, because if your waters have broken, your baby's going to get an infection and you're going to get an infection, and it's really dangerous. So for your baby to be born, 2 weeks earlier and not get an infection compared to 2 weeks later and get one, well, yeah, it's a bit older, but it's a lot sicker. as well, because my waters had broken and I didn't have a lot of fluid going on in there, it's really hard for the baby to turn or move around because there's not stuff for it to float around in, you know, like and it hurt. The baby would move and it hurt because it was just my skin and a baby. So yeah, the day of the 29th of February, I just didn't feel right, just felt sore, felt uncomfortable, ended up ringing the buzzer. One of the nurses came in. My temperature was up a little bit, but nothing to be crazy scared of. So they put the monitor on, and it turned out the baby was completely sideways. He had one arm poking down, which was like punching me, which was what was super uncomfortable. It was a different like specialist doctor on because they obviously come at different times. So she came in to see me, but she didn't want to make any calls. So she said, you know, you've had your doctor from the start, and it's probably good for him to make that final decision and decide what we're doing. I was fine with that. That was fine. Okay. She had gone back to the nursing station, and you know, all the nurses had gone back, and it was really quiet and dark because everyone was sleeping. Got up and went to the bathroom, which was not in my room. It was just outside of my room. Sat down on the toilet and felt something kind of felt like a flick down. I'm thinking, that's kind of weird. Put my hand down and I felt something sticking up. And automatically in my head, I'm thinking, great, my insides are falling out. Like, can anything else go wrong? So I rang the buzzer, a nurse came in. I said to her, I feel like something's coming out of me. And of course that just sounds as if I think my baby's coming out or something. So I think she was like, okay. She's like, come back into your room, lie down, I'll have a check and we'll see what's going on. Like, I'm sure everything's fine. She looks, goes pale, and she literally, this is all she said, oh shit. Push the emergency buzzer, bells are ringing, 5 nurses run into my room, everyone starts yelling at me, get on the bed, on your hands and knees. They're all talking to each other in medical talk. It was dark. I got on my hands and knees. I didn't know what was going on. I had a nurse push whatever was going on back in and hold it in there while they were yelling for a doctor to come down the hallway. A doctor came running. At this point, they'd already started wheeling my bed out of the room. The doctor who had just seen me earlier said to me, Emma, you've had an umbilical prolapse. Basically, this means the baby's umbilical cord is coming out of you. It's cutting off like the life source to your baby. So we need to operate on you urgently. Like, yeah, I had no idea what was going on. It was honestly crazy. Like, it all happened so fast. I got pushed into a theater room. Everyone in their scrubs. There were literally like 20 people in this room, all talking to each other, all talking to me. It was really bright. Like, I think I was just in shock. It was so scary. The next minute, I felt someone put a needle in my arm and black, fell asleep. I woke up in a room. Dan was standing next to me on one side. And a nurse was standing next to me on the other side. Sorry, I'm gonna cry. And I just cried. And I just cried. I didn't know what had happened. I was rushed down a hallway and I was put to sleep, and my baby was cut out of me all in 8 minutes. So this was like major emergency styles, which later the nurse told me it's the like kind of worst case scenario thing that never really happens, and everyone trains for it, but it just doesn't happen. And it happened. And it was not what I was in hospital for. It was nothing, you know, I hadn't got an infection from my waters breaking. I hadn't gone into labor. It was a completely different thing that now I am so glad that I was in hospital for, because if I wasn't already in hospital, Leo wouldn't be here at all. So after a little while, they said, okay, we can wheel you down now to go and see your baby. I don't really remember it, but I do know the first time that I ever met my baby was in the intensive care unit through an incubator. I remember looking at him and first thinking, this is a complete stranger. Like, it's not like I had given birth and been part of it at all. So it's like I couldn't even compute I'd had a baby, because not only did I not give birth to him like a, vaginal birth, or even when people have a C-section birth, they're still kind of awake and they're part of what's going on and they see their baby. I didn't have any of that. The next thing I thought though was, he's actually really cute. I was expecting to see this tiny see-through veiny thing where he looked like a perfect little pink baby. He was just really, really small. They opened up the little door on the incubator and I was allowed to put my hand in and touch him. And that was the equivalent to meeting and holding my baby. And it was weird. And then I got wheeled back to my room. Like three days after he was born, 3 or 4 days. That was the first time I was allowed to actually hold Leo. In the first week that Leo was born, Nixon was allowed to come and visit, just for a really short amount of time, which for him was hard too, to understand that he was coming to meet his brother, and Nixon just kept saying, take him out of the box, can we take him out of the box? And we couldn't. Like almost a week after he was born, he was taken out of his incubator, which was amazing. So he ended up being on like an open incubator bed thing, so it still has a heating mat because he was so small he found it hard to keep his body temperature up. But it meant that you could touch him. But it's such a weird thing because it's so exciting, but it's also really scary. Like you feel like suddenly he's not in his little protective bubble and like, whoa. And on that day as well was the first time that Dan could cuddle him. I was given the all clear that everything was going well and everything was healing, and I was kind of moving around and I was allowed to go home. We had to move, so Dan actually found a new house to rent, and that day happened to be moving day. So I was going home into the chaos of moving house to a house that I'd never even seen, after being away for a really long time and without my baby, and I just felt so emotional. 6 days later, I wasn't feeling very well, was at the hospital to visit Leo, and spoke to one of the nurses there who gave me a checkup and then discovered that I had a major uterus infection and got readmitted back into hospital. I mean, the one good thing was I was back close by for Leo. Eventually, Leo was moved into a big boy bed, which is basically just kind of like a plastic container. But a few days later, his temperature was always really low. It was just tough. He was so small, he couldn't keep warm. So he got moved back onto a thermocot, which is kind of like the open incubator that just keeps them warm. I think a few days later was the first time he drank his milk from a bottle instead of down the feeding tube. That was also really exciting because for us, as soon as he could feed without needing to be with a feeding tube, then technically he could come home. It got to him being allowed to go home. So what they do is you room in, which means you get to stay in a room in the intensive care unit. They've got like special little parent rooms on the outside for when babies are almost ready to go home. You can room in with them so that you feel comfortable with knowing what they need and just different things before you take them home, because it's a really scary thing to take a sick baby home that's been in intensive care for a long time. So I roomed in with him for a night. And then the next day was time to go home. And he was so tiny in his car seat, it was terrifying. We ended up having to roll up all of these pieces of kind of material things to put around him so that he was secure, because he was just so tiny still. And we came home. It's been tough. It's been a really tough year with Leo, because after that journey and him coming home, you're really precious of him, and he basically has spent the whole first year of his life being sick. Anyway, that's my story, and it's a tough one and it's traumatic, and I think it will still take me a really long time to get over it. But we got through it, and we're all here and we're in one piece, and Leo is such a happy baby. He is the happiest child. I found the Little Heartbeats PPROM page super helpful on Facebook, which PPROM is basically your water's breaking really early. And the lady running that page was amazing. She sent from England to New Zealand a pack, which was an information pack. She sent a big toy rabbit which had a recorder inside it, so I could record Leo's heartbeat while he was in my tummy, and he sleeps with it every night. They were just amazing. They were really, really helpful in a time that I felt completely alone. I will put their details down below so that you can check them out as well. And I want to say a really big thank you to the Wellington NICU, because they did an amazing job of looking after Leo and making us feel really comfortable to leave him there, even though we had no choice. But I felt like he was in good hands. I felt like he was safe. The Neonatal Trust, which is the little shop at the start of the NICU, they were amazing. They gave me meals to take home sometimes. So if anyone wants to donate to them, do it. Do it, do it, do it. Sharing my story got me thinking about other people's stories and how they might want to share theirs too. So I reached out on a Facebook page, which was a NICU, a New Zealand NICU one, and I had a few people message, and so I wanted to share them with you too. So if you go to my website, missymalore.com, on the blog page, I'm going to put up this video, and I'm also going to put some of their stories on there. Maybe it might help you. Maybe you're going through the same thing as they are, or you know someone who is. So that might be useful. That's all. I've been talking for such a long time. I'm so sorry, but I hope you enjoyed my video, and if you have any questions, just ask. I'm pretty open and honest, so I'll share my thoughts and feelings with you. Otherwise, I will see you next time.